Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. First off, I want to say I'm not a designer, but as you'll see, I care a lot about design, and I think it has to do with every single thing that happens on the internet and actually in real life. My staff joke and Noel that I think marketing is everything, and design plays into that idea that marketing is everything. So, I want to talk to you today about a new idea I have called Peers Incorporated, and so let me begin. 12 years ago, I co-founded a company called Buzzcar. Buzzcar parks cars throughout dense metropolitan areas for people to use by the hour and by the day instead of using their own cars. Today, there are, I think, a million users using 10,000 cars that are parked throughout North America and in the UK. The magic of Buzzcar is that each car replaces 15 personal cars, and each member drives about 80% less than they do because they now feel the full cost of driving. But what Buzzcar really did, and why it's really successful, is that it made sharing the norm, and it's the way that it did this that I think is very powerful. Now we are a decade later, and I started another company in France called Buzzcar, and it's pushing the envelope a little bit farther. So instead of the company buying the cars, individuals use their own cars and rent them out to friends. So instead of investing in a car as a company, we've invested in the community. Lots of people call this peer-to-peer or P2P, but for me, this does express the humanity and the community of what's going on, but it leaves out every single thing that's interesting. I mean, peer-to-peer is what we would think of as babysitting and yard sales. So for me, peer-to-peer leaves out what is really the most fascinating piece of this whole experiment, and that's the difference between a yard sale and eBay, and the difference between a craft fair and Etsy. And that's what the internet and a platform for participation brings to bear. I think of this as Peers Incorporated, and it's a model where we get the best of what companies have to offer and the best of what individuals have to offer. So it's a symbiotic and complementary partnership, each side delivering what it alone can do and others can't do. We can think about how creating a platform is really not easy. It's the difference between Google Video and YouTube. Why did YouTube win where Google Video failed? So if we talk about what Peers Inc. is, the incorporated side brings economies of scale and all the things that a company alone can do. It can invest money over many, many years. It has different kinds of expertise. It brings contracts and a matter of recourse and the rules and standards, and all of this is bound together in a brand promise. And together I think of this as the platform for participation. It's the way and the place that individuals can now put their own stuff in. And what do the peers bring? The peers bring things that companies can't possibly afford. They bring an incredible diversity of the service and product, and this comes with localization and specialization and customization, access to our own social networks as individuals, and a lot of innovation, which I'll be speaking about later. And so they are the ones who are bringing this service and product design, and it's together, each side bringing what it does best, that really makes this model absolutely incredible. So if I think of Peers Incorporated, the one that you'd be most familiar with would be eBay. What's really exciting about Peers Incorporated is the speed in which these companies can grow once you get this platform delivered. So one example would be carpooling.com, which I'm using here in this slide, although BlaBlaCar is the second largest company in the world that does this here in France. So carpooling.com, after 10 years, now delivers a million people share their cars with other people every single month. So they are giving rides to friends and neighbors who are going on the same long trip as them. And you can see how that's amazing, 1 million people using the service every year. It's, I think it's like 2,500 TGV trains full every single month that they transport, all without buying one single train, without laying one single track, using the excess capacity that was in those people's cars as they went on their long trips. Another example is a company called Fiverr.com. And Fiverr is what will you do for $5. So it's a list of a huge number of services that people will do for $5. And I met the founders when they had just started, just 2 years ago. And in their first 3 weeks, they had 65,000 people who had signed up for things they would want to do for $5. And now, 2 years later, they have 900,000 people who have donated their services onto this website. So again, I'm trying to show, or trying to illustrate, that when you come up with a platform and it's well done, people can put all their services and ideas and it can take off. Another example is Topcoder, and I choose this one because so far we've been talking about examples that seem to be available for everybody. Topcoder is a design and engineering firm that does very complex and very large engineering projects. Today, after 10 years, it has 400,000 engineers who are participating on this platform. And when I talked to their CEO, he said that he feels that Topcoder is like a community that has its own company. One of my favorite examples is Etsy. Etsy is people selling things that they have made or curated themselves, so there's no middlemen involved. And Etsy, after 7 years, now has, as you can see, a huge number of people who are selling their stuff online. And last year they sold $600 million worth of goods that they gave back to the people who manufactured them. So their sales were that much. It's really just the speed and scale of these companies is incredible. So you can imagine that you're listening to the story and you're thinking, I want to make a peer platform, a peers incorporated company. I want to be the one who has that great sales curve. But it all circles around if this platform for participation is well done. And I know about this because I launched such a company just a year ago in France called Buzzcar, as we said. And if you've ever started a company or built something or done a website, you know that it is so much work beforehand, and then the day you launch, you are just thinking, are all your hopes and dreams, what's going to happen when you turn it on, when people can finally get at it? So for me, Buzzcar was a difficult challenge. It was completely different than doing Zipcar, because when you do a peers incorporated company, you have, on the one hand, you have the owners who own the cars, and that's one market for everything you do, and you have on the other side the people who are going to rent them. So every single thing we do has two separate markets. So all of the communications, the design, our decisions around the business have to always appeal to two sets of people. For me, the hardest one is insurance was just an incredibly difficult thing. It took me a year to find it, talking with insurers, which is not an easy job. It was horrible, in fact. And finally, I found a really wonderful company. And what was so difficult about this was that for Buzzcar, we had to provide an insurance that made owners happy. They had to feel that their car was going to be 100% protected when it was being driven, and that their driving history would never be affected by what someone else did in the car. But from the user side, we needed to make sure that they had a price they could afford and a deductible that was not huge. So I had to make a balance between what owners needed and what drivers needed, and this we succeeded. So I want to take you to the day we turned on the service, which was the beginning of June last year. And we turned it on. We had a huge amount of press. It was just this enormous beginning, and people started signing up, and owners were adding their cars, and it was very, very exciting. And then there was my look of surprise, like, oh my gosh, what happened was not at all what I expected to happen. And what happened was, when people were making reservations to drive other cars, the owners who had gone to all the trouble of signing up didn't bother to answer. So they've signed up and they weren't even answering these requests that says, hey, Robin would like to rent your car and you can earn 60 euros this weekend. they weren't replying. A very small percentage were replying. And when I looked at that, I thought, this is the difference between peer production and industrial production. If you have an industrial production, the whole point of the Industrial Revolution was to choose one quality at one price point, and it was there in the middle of a quality spectrum. Whereas peers produce the entire spectrum, and eBay was the first one to figure this out, which is why they introduced ratings and commentaries, which of course we have done. So part of what peers incorporated companies have to do, and part of what Buzzcar has to do, is we have to work very, very hard on making sure that people who are not going to be good producers of service are that they are commented and noted, and we can put those guys to the side and bring to the front people who deliver really fabulous outcomes. So we have this whole yuck side of the equation. But needless to say, when we launched, there was also my side that was all the good things that I knew were going to happen with Peers Incorporated. And so here is my very, very happy face of what fabulous things happened. And what this was the diversity that this service of Buzzcar brings. So we have this lovely diversity, and that means that we have a large number of drivers, large number of cars spread all across France, giving us different prices in different locations and different kinds of drivers. And you can see these pictures. I absolutely adore our owners and our drivers, and you can see the incredible diversity of offering that they provide us. So after, here we are about 15 months after we launched the company, and we have more than 11,000 people have signed up and put 1,500 cars that are spread across France. And this is something that no regular company could have done in such a short period of time. And so we have got this beautiful collaboratively built transportation infrastructure that's spread across France. But if we look again at this quality spectrum, what is really amazing about peer production is that we talked about the bad side of things, all the yuck side, but there is this side of things that are better than what a normal company could provide, because we have now more than 1,000 individual owners who are responding to this service demand. And for example, one of our drivers was renting a car to go on an island, Ile-Dieu, for those of you who live here. And the owner of the car could say, you know what, I know that island really well. If you drive on this side, it's beautiful cliffs. On this side is the beaches. My favorite beach is this one, and my favorite restaurant is here. That's something that a car rental company could never provide for you. So if we think about this production, we can see that there's this amazing wow side of things. And what I find so amazing is, if we think of a normal company, you might have one person in charge of innovation, or your big company, you might have 100 people in charge of innovation. In a Peers Inc. structured company, you now have this innovation, this iteration of new service and new products being done by thousands and tens of thousands of people, and millions if we think of eBay, who are now looking at ways to provide a service. So the quality, we can really move the quality of things up. We named the company Buzzcar in part to remind us of this power of the hive. And the company is providing a solid platform for participation and innovation. And getting this right is a constant iteration for us, looking at, I feel like every single week we are improving that because how drivers find the site and how owners find the site, does it market itself well to both sides? Is the user interface as simple as we can make it? This is this constant thing, and as I say, it's the power of the hive for Buzzcar that really is going to make it succeed or fail. Just to bring this idea of Peers Incorporated out to a very, very large scale, when I think about the world's problems, which I do way too often, and the speed and urgency with which we need to address things like climate change or hunger or poverty, I see that this Peers Incorporated platform will be the answer for us. So if I look at transportation, which is still, I think, the center of the universe, that every single thing revolves around that, We find these peers incorporated types of companies that can grow at the speed and scale required, but we can look at other ideas in other sectors like education and energy and housing, water and employment and health, and we're finding this peers incorporated structure in those arenas. And for me, really, this is the only way we will be able to meet the needs of the future at the speed and scale.